A few weeks ago, I reviewed an impressive new game called Akimbot, a well-made 3D platformer that was clearly inspired by the long-running Ratchet & Clank series. Not to be outdone, first-time developer VEA Games has brought us Nikoderiko, the Magic World, a fantastic throwback platformer that combines the best elements of Donkey Kong Country and Crash Bandicoot. It's a game that seamlessly moves from 2D to 3D, all while filling the screen with vibrant colors and comical bad guys that are bursting with personality. Could it be the best platformer of the year? Well, that's what we're about to find out when I review Nikoderiko, the Magical World. Let me introduce you to Nico and Luna, a pair of mongoose treasure hunters who target a magical island for their next score. However, things go awry when a Bowser-like villain named Grimbald sets fire to their airship and steals the treasure. Now it's up to the duo to run, jump, and even ride through 7 colorful worlds in order to help their animal friends and take back the ancient relics that they rightfully stole in the first place. Look, the setup may not be especially original, but this is one of those games that's gonna suck you in right from the first level. As a side-scroller, Nikoderiko is more than a little reminiscent of the Donkey Kong Country series. You run around a tropical setting, picking up countless items, spelling words, and just to hammer the comparison home, right on the back of everything from Boris the Boar to a giant bat. Now, what sets this game apart from Nintendo's classic franchise is that Nikoderiko will occasionally turn into a 3D game that will immediately remind you of the Crash Bandicoot franchise. The effect is seamless and always impressive, taking you from a side-scroller to a 3D platformer without missing a step. This allows us to not only see the world and the bad guys from an all-new perspective, but it also changes how you interact with the levels. As a critic, it's easy to compare a game like this to the classic platformers that came before it, but the developers at VEA Games have clearly learned from the best. No matter if you're running from left to right or through a 3D forest, the levels are both gorgeous and, most importantly, fun to play. There are all kinds of hidden collectibles to pick up and secret areas to find, as well as multiple paths to take and different ways to tackle the obstacles. Maybe you want to explore every nook and cranny with Nico and Luna, or perhaps you just want to speed through the level by riding one of the trusty mounts. The choice is yours. Best of all, you can bring a second player along, reuniting the treasure hunting duo and making it one of the year's best co-op experiences. And it's not just the levels that impress, but it's also the enemies. You've no doubt seen these types of animal bad guys in other mascot games, but rarely do they have this much personality. These villains are beautifully rendered with expressive animation and different types of weaknesses. For example, sometimes you'll need to slide into enemies to defeat them, while others will need a butt stomp to the head, or maybe a little of both. The game's constantly throwing newer and harder enemies at us, and I couldn't wait to study them even closer when they switch to 3D. And you better believe that this also extends to the boss fights. Each battle plays out a little differently, forcing you to change up your strategy from one boss to the next. While I'm not going to go as far as to say that the bad guys actually upstage Nico and Luna, they come surprisingly close. A lot of this is because Nikoderiko is an absolutely stunning game from beginning to end. For an indie game that was made by a first-time developer, I'm honestly shocked at how good everything looks. And it's not just the vibrant colors and the expressive animation either, but it's also the layer of detail that's gone into each of the different worlds. While none of these stage types are especially new or different from your typical platformer, VEA Games has found inventive ways to give each of them a unique personality. There are some real surprises here, and none of the stages play out exactly how you expect. They're long, they're exciting, and they're full of charm. As a platformer, I honestly had more fun playing through Nikoderiko than either of the most recent Donkey Kong Country or Crash Bandicoot games. And I have a hunch that this was made for a fraction of the cost. Look, I cannot stress enough just how much the shifting from 2D to 3D helps set this game apart. This is hardly the first game to try this, but very few have done it as well as Nikoderiko. The shift in perspective keeps you on your toes, and there's always something exciting to see when you shift to 3D. It helps that the gameplay is easy and responsive in both styles, never once letting us down. If you're a pro at the side-scrolling stages, then you're going to have no problem fighting off the animal enemies when the perspective suddenly changes. The controls are finely tuned, and the moves are easy to pull off. When I died, it was almost always my own fault. Man, this really is a great platformer. That said, it's clear this game is aimed at a younger audience. While some of the later levels may take you a few tries to beat, the overall game is a bit on the easy side. The checkpointing is more than generous, and both Nico and Luna have unlimited lives. There are also plenty of health items to pick up and multiple paths to take, some of which can help you bypass some of the tougher obstacles. If you're a longtime fan of this genre, then you're gonna have no problem speeding through this thing in like 4 or 5 hours. It's also worth pointing out that the game has some weird issues when it comes to the audio, specifically the music. While I generally like the soundtrack, I couldn't help but notice that it skips and stutters around when the action heats up. And it's not just when there are a lot of enemies on the screen either, but also during the cinema scenes. Now, it could be that this problem is isolated to the PlayStation 5 version of the game, but it was bad enough that it made me want to mute the game after only a few stages. This is a weird issue, and one that I actually haven't run into with other games. I suppose that one could make the argument that there isn't a whole lot that's actually new about Nikoderiko, and, to an extent that's true. But what this game lacks in originality, it more than makes up for with expertly crafted stages, gorgeous graphics, and a pair of likable heroes that I could see easily sustaining a whole series of sequels. This is a confident platformer that takes elements from the best to create a game that rarely falters. It may not reinvent the genre, but you know what? It doesn't need to. Sometimes just being a great platformer is enough. If you're a fan of Crash Bandicoot and Donkey Kong Country, then the new game Nikoderiko, The Magical World, is an absolute must-play. It's a strong debut release from VEA Games that not only manages to capture the charm and personality of those classic games, but actually outshines most of the recent high-profile platformers. Seamlessly shifting from 2D to 3D and offering a vibrant world full of hidden paths and secret areas, this is a game that just can't help but impress. Nikoderiko is the best kind of surprise. Hey, thanks for watching my review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. Which do you like more, Crash Bandicoot or Donkey Kong Country? That's right, it's a feud. Now, my instincts tell me that Donkey Kong's gonna be the clear winner here. But Crash Bandicoot has a strong fan base. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back tomorrow with a brand new Review Crew episode. Actually, I haven't written it yet, so we'll see what happens. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,